And the art of diplomacy. North Korean talks continue with progress over sending dancers and an orchestra to the Winter Olympics. All right, first up, the government has unveiled the planned price of tickets for the controversial high-speed rail link joining Hong Kong and China. A single journey from West Kowloon to Guangzhou will cost $260. Speaking to reporters after a meeting with the China Railway Corporation in Beijing, Transport Secretary Frank Chan said it will cost passengers $80 for a single trip to Fushan, $90 to Shenzhen North and $210 to Humen. China says there will be 228 trains in service during peak periods, but there'll be adjustments after the link is opened, which is expected to be in the third quarter of this year.
In comparison to the current train to Guangzhou, which costs $210, this is attractive because the link is faster and more comfortable. Of course, which route passengers choose to use is up to them.
Well, the cost of buying a home, meanwhile, in Hong Kong looks likely to stay high for young people. The cost of mortgages probably won't be relaxed because of an expected rise in interest rates in Hong Kong this year. High property prices will also keep that cost high as well. That's according to Financial Secretary Paul Chan, who made the remarks after attending the annual Asian Financial Forum. Chan warns that easing the cap on mortgage rates now could be dangerous.
At this stage, if we were to relax mortgage percentage to allow those who are with marginal financial ability to enter into the property market, if there were an adjustment, downward adjustment in the market, these people would be the most hard hit.
In other local news, ousted lawmaker Edward Yu and former legislator Gary Fan have won the pro-democracy camp's election primaries in Kowloon West and New Territories East. That means the pair will represent the Pan Democrats to join the LegCo by-elections in March. New People's Party Judy Chan, meanwhile, has also thrown her hat into the ring to contest Demosisto's Agnes Chow for the seat in the Hong Kong Island constituency. Earlier, District Councillor Paul Zimmerman announced he was planning on running in the by-election for the architectural functional constituency. He's expected to run against former lawmaker Tony Tse. A 3-year-old girl has died from flu-related complications this morning, the first child death from flu in Hong Kong this year. The girl, suffering from influenza B, had been in a critical condition since last week. Doctors said she'd suffered from neurologic complications triggered by the flu, but hadn't been vaccinated. A 3-year-old boy with chronic illness is also in critical condition after contracting the same flu strain. It comes amid growing global worries about flu outbreaks this year, which have killed hundreds of people in the West. Meanwhile, train services between Hong Kong and Tai Wai were suspended for about an hour this afternoon after a man died when he fell onto the track at Kowloon Tong MTR station. Trains running between Lo Wu and Lok Ma Chau were also affected. Service has since returned to normal. OK, elsewhere, scores of people in Indonesia have been injured after a floor in the Jakarta Stock Exchange collapsed this afternoon. Police say at least 77 people were injured, with many of them university students visiting the exchange. Officers cordoned off the two-tower multi-storey complex as many people ran away, while others were seen sitting on steps outside the lobby. Authorities have ruled out a bomb as the cause. Images circulating on social media showed a mangled metal structure that had collapsed around a Starbucks cafe near the entrance.
The roof of the first floor collapsed into the ground floor. There might be a few people who are injured, like the receptionist and people who hung out in Starbucks, but I didn't see any dead. It just looks like they were injured and unconscious so far. A meeting of foreign ministers from around 20 countries to discuss how to resolve the North Korean crisis is set to be held later today in Canada. The meeting comes as a South Korean delegation set off for the North this morning for further talks on North Korea's participation at the upcoming Winter Olympics. Grace Lee has more.
As the two Koreas hash out the Olympics agenda on Monday, signs the South may see a different sort of K-pop at the Winter Olympics. The leader of a girl group handpicked by Kim Jong-un called Morambong was part of the day's talks. Officials say they were hammering out details about sending a so-called art troupe to the Olympics that may include singers, dancers, and an orchestra. It's part of the two sides' first official dialogue in 2 years, which kicked off last week, meant to soothe tensions and avoid any mistakes flaring up into full-blown conflict, especially during the Olympic Games. On Tuesday, a separate meeting about the North will kick off in Canada, with foreign ministers from 20 different nations, including the U.S., looking for ways to cut off the North's weapons program. But one key player for any long-term solution won't be there: China.
This meeting will not help resolve tensions on the Korean peninsula. It's strange that some relevant parties are using a Cold War approach. We are resolutely opposed to it.
The Vancouver meeting comes as border talks have set Korean tensions at relative ease, at least temporarily. The North and South may have another meeting to work out plans for the Olympics as soon as Wednesday.
Up next, the latest from the world of business.
Well, here in Hong Kong, markets finally ended a 2-week winning streak. That's despite the Hang Seng opening strongly today, about 0.9% higher and rallying through the morning. Things went south come afternoon, with the index ending the day 0.25% lower at 31,339 points. Gains in casino stocks limited losses, with Sands China soaring 5.5% and Galaxy Entertainment up 3.4%. Well, sources say Xiaomi has picked CITIC Securities, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley as joint sponsors for its proposed IPO. The highly anticipated tech float, which could value the smartphone maker at as much as $100 billion, is expected to come in the second half of the year, and likely Hong Kong hopes to be launched here on the Hang Seng. In other IPO news, SoftBank plans to raise $18 billion by listing its mobile phone business. That's according to the Nikkei newspaper, which expects it to be one of Japan's biggest ever IPOs. It's a spin-off that would complete the Japanese telecoms giant's transformation into a global tech investor. The report says SoftBank plans to apply for the listing in spring, with aims to debut the shares in Tokyo and elsewhere, possibly London, around autumn. In a statement, SoftBank Group said a listing was one option, but no decision had yet been made. Staying in Japan, a senior Bank of Japan official has said the country is seeing positive moves towards an end to deflation as companies benefit from strong growth at home and abroad. This comes as the central bank's governor predicted moderate growth for Japan's economy as he spoke on monetary policy. Here's more from Mayu Yoshida in Tokyo.
Bank of Japan has once again made it clear that it will run its ultra-easy policy as long as required. The Japanese yen gained during Tokyo trading hours Monday after BOJ Governor Haruhiko Kuroda said the central bank will stick to its ambitious 2% inflation target. He kept away from words some had expected to hear, though, like powerful and aggressive regarding the Japanese economy, and instead Kuroda used the term moderate expansion when talking about the economic outlook. Analysts say this signals the BOJ's desire to maintain the status quo on monetary policy for the time being. His remarks came at a time when Japan is still struggling from low inflation. Japanese companies fear rising prices could scare away cost-sensitive consumers.
Well, China's central bank today lent nearly 400 billion yuan to financial institutions through its one-year medium-term lending facility, or MLF. In a statement, the People's Bank of China said the move was in response to a relatively large decrease in banking system liquidity. Some traders, though, said they still see it as a sign of bias towards tightening. They pointed out the regulators chose to use the more expensive MLF instead of other options, such as repurchasing agreements, to help make money easier to get hold of. Well, the head of Baidu's self-driving car program said he believes that security risks for self-driving cars could be the biggest problem for autonomous vehicles. Chief Operating Officer Qi Lu was quoted by the Financial Times as saying foreign firms will have a high bar to meet local policy requirements for self-driving cars. That's because, quote, a vehicle that can move by itself, by definition, is a weapon. He was speaking on the sidelines of the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, where Baidu announced a new $200 million fund to invest in Southeast Asia efforts to improve autonomous driving. While Britain's Carillion has finally collapsed after banks refused to continue lending the troubled construction and services giant any more money. The development has thrown hundreds of major projects in doubt and could jeopardize the jobs of as many as 43,000 people worldwide. Carillion was forced into liquidation after costly contract delays and a downturn in new business. It prompted a string of profit warnings and a first-half loss of more than £1 billion. The UK government has held a series of crisis meetings on how to respond. The opposition Labour Party says taxpayers should not have to bail out the company. While Asian markets have charged ahead with a solid Monday, apart from Hong Kong, and that's in part thanks to business being buoyed by the expected bumper week of corporate earnings in the US. But as David Pollard reports, it's actually China that's more likely to shift sentiment.
Bringing your money back into the country can be expensive, especially if you're JP Morgan. Its $2.4 billion charge, announced on Friday as a one-time repatriation hit on income kept abroad, was bigger than expected. But markets took it in their stride, braced as they are for the impact of Donald Trump's tax bill that'll be seen in this week's heavy load of US corporate releases.
The most interesting thing will be the wider corporate earnings and the comments about what will happen to the tax cuts, where they're going to go. Are they going to go into dividends? Are they going to go investment? Are they going to go into wage rises?
Sentiment, though, good, as markets pencil in a rise of nearly 12% in S&P 500 earnings for the last quarter.
US companies are in a very healthy position, and there are some very, very good tailwinds taking them on their way.
Oil, too, in focus after it breached key levels at $70 a barrel.
It is likely that, particularly in the US, that we will have extra supply coming on board, and that should help keep a lid potentially on oil prices. But I think against a backdrop of strong global growth, perhaps not too surprising that we are seeing these stronger position in oil prices.
China's growth is in the frame on Thursday. Policy sources tell Reuters Beijing is likely to keep its target at around 6.5% in 2018, unchanged from last year. The latest numbers come with retail sales data that could tip the debate over Chinese consumers and whether they're able to push demand forward, even while facing a crackdown on cheap credit.
And that's all from me. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, thanks for that, Dee. And something tells me that the Hong Kong market is only taking a breather and that markets are going to be moving higher still. Anyway, we are taking a breather as well. But when we return, North Koreans exercise their right to be fit as the country puts on a sports spectacle. Don't go away.
On the road to becoming the best in the field, we pledge to revamp the world through television. We pave roads between humans and nature. We speak the